Well, hey, everybody, John Stonestreet here from the Colson Center, and I just wanted to let all of our folks know about some resources that you can use to be engaged in what is a really significant part of the election for Colorado residents. So I don't know if you've heard or if you've gotten the Blue Book yet, but it's enormous, and there are 14 ballot initiatives, including some wacky, crazy ones, but there is one that is absolutely significant that we do everything we can to hold back. It's called Amendment 79. It's called an amendment because it's not just an initiative. This is a vote on a constitutional amendment to the Colorado State Constitution about the issue of abortion. Now, I know what some of you are thinking, which is Colorado's, already quite one of the most pro-abortion states that we have, and that is absolutely the case. In fact, just a couple weeks ago, I was speaking at Para-Pregnancy Resource Center banquets up in Longmont, and what's the other L?
Loveland.
Loveland. There we go. Thanks, Marcie. I'll introduce Marcie here in just a second, by the way. The argument there, the claim that was made there was that Colorado is the top abortion state in America, particularly when it comes to tourism. So what you have here is a ballot initiative that is a constitutional amendment that will shrine full and unfettered abortion rights that are far more extreme than what we had under Roe v. Wade in the state constitution, which means it's going to be really hard to pull back on any of those with any restrictions. And it also, I think, has the real potential to increase the abortion tourism into this state and the potential to become kind of a grounding for attacking pro-life groups and pro-life pregnancy centers. So to face that kind of imminent enemy, who else should we talk to except the brave and courageous and great Marcie Little? I've known Marcie for a long time through our relationship with other organizations such as Summit Ministries. We've talked before about issues of life and abortion in the state of Colorado. And Marcie, tell everyone about kind of the group that you're working with now, as well as the coalition that you're working with now that that are really aimed at this Amendment 79.
Yeah, thanks, John. So I represent Coloradans for the Protection of Women and Children. We are working hard to defeat Amendment 79 for all the reasons you just mentioned. There's also a broader coalition across the state called Right to Know. You can read more about that, Right to Know, .com.org, one of those. But we're spread out all over the state trying to sound the alarm on this amendment because it truly would radically change our state in ways that we can anticipate, and I think in some ways that maybe we haven't anticipated yet. But certainly pro-life groups and pregnancy centers have already been under attack by the other side, and that will just continue if Amendment 79 passes.
Well, and look, we know that some of that attack has been, kind of rogue and, and as a result of, in fact, the Longmont Pregnancy Center that I spoke at was firebombed.
Yep.
And was out of commission for a year. And yet those women rebuilt. They set aside other space at churches and they kept showing up for work. I was just really stunned by the courage that they showed. I mean, it's one thing to go in when you have threats. It's another thing when that threat actually has been carried out in a way that, really could have been deadly in a lot of ways. Okay. But we got to focus in on it. And one of the key points I want everyone to take away from today is, look, there is a long-term battle that we are waging in order to defend preborn lives, protect the innocent, and stop an evil of abortion in our culture. That long-term fight is going to be made up of a lot of battles. If we try to win the whole war between now and November, we're going to miss this, which we've got to stop this, by God's grace, if at all possible. And so the reason I wanted to be clear on that is there are a lot of reasons why we should vote no on Amendment 79 that aren't just because we recognize that every life is made in the image and likeness of God and has extreme, inherent dignity and eternal value from the moment of conception to the moment of death. There are folks who are pro-abortion that actually would have reasons to oppose this. And what we want to do in a very, forgive me, this is not an ends justify the means, argument for pragmatism, but we just have to get through November and do what we can. We do not have the time right now, to make the full case for life and to see hearts and minds change. God may use this for that. Please do that. But we want to be as strategic as possible. So without reading the text of the bill or the initiative, I think we can summarize really quickly. This is what Amendment 79 will do. So let's get that out in the open, because that's the talking points we all need to have on the tip of our tongues for our friends and our neighbors. So Marcie, what will Amendment 79 do?
Yep. The first thing it will do is it will take the current Colorado law and enshrine it into the Constitution. So right now, abortion is not restricted in any way in the state of Colorado. Then that will become part of our Constitution, which means that we will not be able to pass any sort of restrictions on abortion moving forward. And when we say restrictions, what we really mean is our regulations as well. So even if we wanted to come back and say, at least we got to make sure women are protected and are able to get to emergency rooms, or we got to hold faulty abortionists accountable for their unsanitary clinics. Those types of things won't be allowed if this amendment goes through.
Because those things currently aren't in the law in any sort of sense. So,
no, because the other side considers those restrictions. They don't want anything to impede a woman's ability to get an abortion.
And people don't realize, and this is really important, just to clarify this point, Colorado is one of the most pro-abortion states in America. We do have late-term abortions through the 9th month. We do have, for example, a for-profit clinic in Pueblo who is run by one of the most famous late-term abortionists, I think out of Kansas, I think. And we don't have any sort of protections that, just reasonable common sense, which is really where the majority of Americans are. So that puts this in the Constitution and basically makes kind of pulling back even a little bit, any sort of 21-week ban, all that's off the table. And holding abortionists accountable, that's huge. Off the table. Okay, good. Number one, what else does Amendment 79 do?
The second thing that it does, which this is why people do think we can defeat this amendment, going back to your point about bringing in others who maybe are not even pro-life or maybe they're conflicted on the issue, it removes the current prohibition against tax dollars going to fund abortions. So Coloradans in 1984, when this was being debated nationwide, we had legalized abortion in 1967. In 1984, Coloradans decided, okay, we have legal abortion, but we don't want to be forced to pay for someone else's abortion through our tax dollars. This protection also exists at the federal level. So federal tax dollars do not go to pay abortions. That's the Hyde Amendment. This amendment, 79, wants to do away with that, which Colorado voters have actually voted on twice. We've reaffirmed we don't want our tax dollars going to this. And so it would open up the door for tax dollars to fund other people's abortions through public health insurance plans.
That's really important. Doesn't mean every abortion will be state funded.
No.
But it means in terms of any public plans and public employees. And that really also, the key there is that it's also ground for the continued expansion of federal funding. Once you get rid of that restriction, now it's just a matter of pulling more people into the tent. That's what many people think would increase. If Colorado, you can get an abortion at any stage and you decide you want one. And not only that, but you might even be able to get it paid for. That's where the tourism initiative goes up. Okay. What else?
So for people too, I want to go back to the late-term abortion point, because those are the main things that this amendment would do. People say, oh, late-term abortion doesn't happen, or because I think they say that because it's too unfathomable. It's too extreme for us to think this really happens. In 2021, we had 35 abortions in the state of Colorado that were reported that happened at 28 weeks of pregnancy or beyond. The next year, in 2022, after we legalized abortion, after Texas criminalized abortion, and after the Dobbs decision was made, and so abortion was criminalized, or states were able to criminalize abortion nationwide, we had 118 abortions at 28 weeks or farther
35
along.
to 118.
That's a 237% increase. For abortions between the weeks of 25 and 27, in 2021, we had 25, and then we saw a 352% increase the following year by 113. So there were 113 total. The reason this matters, and the second point that I'll reiterate that you made earlier, is after we passed REA, the Reproductive Health Equity Act, in 2022, we already had one late-term abortion clinic that was operating in Boulder. It's been there since the 80s. The second clinic that opened in Pueblo that you mentioned, that the now late Leroy Carhart opened, specifically, he opened it because late-term abortion was being cramped down on in Nebraska where he was, and he wanted to come here because late-term abortion was legal. So the fact that someone would make a financial decision to financially invest in a clinic to perform late-term abortion shows that it's happening. So that is a very real thing. Women are being forced to have abortions here from other states. All of that would remain legal and get worse if this goes through. The third thing people need to know is right now, theoretically, parents are supposed to be notified if their daughter is seeking an abortion. Now, there's a judicial bypass system that a girl can go through, so it's easy still for her to get an abortion. If this goes through, parents will be cut out of the picture entirely because, again, something as simple as parental notification is seen as a restriction. So those are kind of the three main things. It's going to continue to allow late-term abortions through all 9 months of pregnancy, which is going to increase the number of women who come to Colorado for their abortions. It removes parental notification permanently, and it would force taxpayers to fund other people's abortions.
So when you're talking, folks, about this Amendment 79 to your friends and neighbors in the state of Colorado, to your pastors, this is kind of real basic borderline stuff, right? It's just, look, do we want the inability to ever change our minds on this? Look, do we want to increase the trafficking of people and the tourism industry, which has been created in our state for abortion? Do we really want in another way? We already know there's a ton of ways that our state is stepping in between parents and their children. Do we want another way for that, especially on an issue that has such grave moral weight? And at least, like, even just for the well-being of the daughter, even if you don't believe that the child is, worthy of protection, just to have a daughter be able to go through this by herself, that's why we have parental notification stuff. And it is, of course, insane that these same children couldn't get a Tylenol from the school nurse without a parental notification, but they're able to do this. This is not the sort of context we want to create, for our state, and we want to be able to stand up. This is not a talking point, but it's also something that I really want to articulate here and ask you about, Marcie, in order to just kind of say, this is really important. And we want to do whatever we can between now and election day, to pull this back. But it does seem to me like the language is pretty strong in this, like that there shall be a constitutional right in Colorado, that this is an unfettered right. Nobody can get in the way of XYZ. That sort of language there can be further weaponized by further legislation, further ballot initiatives. We've had some states, for example, they said, if you receive a tax benefit from the state, you're an agent from the state, agent of the state, right? Now that's kind of crazy talk, right? Where a church, because they receive a tax exemption as a 501c3 nonprofit, are then seen as getting benefits from the state. And that, is red tape. And so when you think about that, and you think about, for example, the language about anti-transitioning laws, you can't counsel on anybody. I wonder if this sort of language doesn't lay some groundwork that will further penalize people who are trying to protect lives and trying to do it with women. We already have, legislation that's passed through the legislature that I think is still held up in court, which basically says if you're a medical professional, you cannot, recommend or prescribe abortion pill reversal. And we know 60% of all abortions, I don't know what the numbers are in Colorado, but overall are chemical. So in other words, this is a step towards, I think, further penalizing or aggressively going after pro-lifers. Am I overstating it?
No, I don't think so. And that's, again, one of these things that isn't explicit in the language, so people can miss it. But our state has already gone after pregnancy centers in a number of ways. So you mentioned pregnancy centers, other health clinics across the state are no longer allowed to give a woman progesterone if she takes the first pill in the abortion pill regimen and changes her mind.
And progesterone is used to alleviate the risk of miscarriage already.
Yeah.
You can do that.
Yeah.
But if the woman's chosen an abortion and changed her mind, you can't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And this is how radical our state legislature is, because I was there when all the committee testimonies were happening. Women showed up to testify with their children, their babies who had been born as a result of abortion pill reversal, testifying against this bill, saying, my baby is here today because of abortion pill reversal. And our legislators still said, no, it's unfounded. It's not proven. It's dangerous. Women have been prescribed progesterone for decades as a way to prevent miscarriage and strengthen pregnancy. So it's outrageous. But the other thing that same bill did that was signed into law that was, I don't know if it can be more insidious, but just as insidious is it polices speech that pregnancy centers can use to advertise their services to women. So it says you cannot advertise that you offer choices to women if you do not also offer the choice of an abortion. And so one of our state legislators from here in Colorado Springs actually asked in committee and said, does that mean if a pregnancy center put up a billboard that said, pregnant, need help, we can provide choices to you, would that be considered misleading language? And the bill sponsor said yes. So pregnancy centers have to be very careful right now about how they advertise their services. Even though they do offer women choices, they offer the choice of parenting, of adoption, coming alongside and helping women through their pregnancies. So it's only going to continue, just as another kind of example of things that are happening in other states that I think this would open the door to. The state of Massachusetts actually put $1 million into billboard ads warning people about the misleading nature of pregnancy centers. They told them what keywords to look for. If they're using these words, you should stay away. So I think we're going to see an increase too in state funding attacking places like pregnancy centers if this goes through.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, okay. So again, that is a reason that this Amendment 79 should alarm us, because it shores up kind of the ground from which these other things can happen. That's going to be a hard thing to communicate in a conversation over coffee or, on the bus or something like that with your friends and neighbors. But the key 3 points again, is that this codifies abortion without any restrictions and any sort of backpedaling at all in the Constitution. It separates parents from their children. It removes any sort of requirement for parental consent. And now we are, basically opening the door for taxpayer, and our tax dollars will go to fund abortions. And that's just the beginning. And I think those are 3 things that a lot of people, don't want any part of, even if they're not willing, for example, to pass some sort of abortion ban. That's the confusion here that people need to have, clarified for them. Is that you have 10 states, right, that have an amendment or initiatives on the ballot. And it's like all of these are the same, right? Yeah. Which is, this is whether or not women can get abortions.
Mm-hmm.
No.
They're phrasing it that way.
That literally, like all these are saying the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it is not. Okay. So what we need is for folks like you Colson fellows, like you Breakpoint listeners, like you folks that are, believe that God's called us to be engaged in a cultural moment, to do what we can do. The results are up to him, but we do what we can do. And there's a whole set of resources that have been developed. We want to talk about those here just quickly. Marcie, go ahead. And I've got one set of resources that I want to mention, but go ahead and tell what, we need folks to go to their pastors, ask their pastors to talk about this. We need folks to go to their small groups and talk about it at their small groups. What are the resources you have to help these folks help others?
Yep. So we have a whole church resource kit on our website. If you go to covoteno79.org, CO for Colorado, voteno79.org, there's a church resources tab so people can download that. It includes talking points. So everything we've been talking through, just nice bullet points. Here's what's at stake. Here's what happens if Amendment 79 goes through. We also have some social media resources if people want to share on social media, so you can grab those. You can follow us on social media. That's all linked on that website. We have some videos coming out that can be used both in churches or, again, those can be shared on social media, emailed out to friends, things like that. We also have yard signs available. So if people want to donate for yard signs, we're using all of the proceeds from that to fund our digital ad campaigns to kind of again, we want all the pro-life people to obviously vote no on this, but even to people who may not be pro-life, but don't agree with late-term abortion, don't agree with taxpayer funding and the removal of parents from the equation. So you can get yard signs at that same website, download the church resources kit. There's talking points all throughout. And our contact information is there. So if you have questions or need more resources, if we don't have them, we can connect you to the people that do.
That's great. I want to mention a set of resources that are available at also at a kind of an alliance website. This is the Colorado Pregnancy Care Alliance. And the website is co-pca.org, co-pca.org, and then also /resources. This is a set of videos that our friends at Apologetics Inc. did in collaboration with Scott Klusendorf. They initially were done to help the Florida initiative, but now they've been also adapted to Colorado. There is a video specifically to pastors. So if you can get your in front of your pastor and say, hey, we need to talk about this, and then give him this video, that could be, I think, really helpful. And then just videos, about abortion, about basically the messaging lies that are part of all these initiatives. And hopefully that can be helpful as well. Again, co-pca.org/resources. Marcie, again, put up the website or say the website that all your resources are on.
covoteno79.org.
There we go. And what we'll do is you can see all those in the byline below and hopefully be able to check that out. Marcie, thanks. Thanks for bringing a lot of clarity to this. This video is going out to all of our folks in the Colorado area that are on our list, the Colson Fellows and so on. And we're asking them to activate and do everything that they can to join this cause. And I appreciate your work in the area and also the coalition that you've built. And been a part of building that has been helpful here. So thanks so much.
Yeah. Thanks, John.